In the shadowed corners of human history, long before the grand empires and their marble gods, there existed smaller, more intimate forms of worship. Objects carried in pockets, hidden in the folds of a traveler's cloak, or tucked away in the dark recesses of a family tent. These were gods of the household, gods of comfort, gods of the tangible world. They promised security in a world that offered very little. And at the heart of our story tonight lies a profound and unsettling question. What happens when the God who spoke the universe into existence declares that He, and He alone, is worthy of our worship? This is not a declaration of ego, but a statement of reality. It's the central truth upon which all of creation is balanced. The very first of the great commandments given to Moses thunders this truth: "You shall have no other gods before me." It's a call to undivided allegiance, a divine jealousy that is not petty, but protective. It is the fierce, loving demand of a creator who knows that any other object of worship is a path to bondage, a lie that promises freedom but delivers only chains. If you're ready to explore the ancient tensions that still echo in our modern hearts, the conflict between faith in the unseen and the pull of the tangible, then settle in. This journey into the heart of a fractured family and the mystery of their hidden gods will reveal more about ourselves than we might expect. Be sure to subscribe and click the notification bell, because you won't want to miss where this investigation leads. The allure of idolatry isn't really about a fascination with carved wood or molded metal. It's about a deep-seated human desire for control. An invisible, all-powerful God who operates on His own timeline and in His own sovereign will can be unsettling. He cannot be manipulated, bribed, or contained within a shrine. An idol, on the other hand, is predictable. It's physically present. You can see it, touch it, carry it with you. It represents a domesticated form of spirituality, a God on a leash. This was the great sin of Israel at the foot of Mount Sinai. While Moses was communing with the living God in fire and cloud, the people below grew restless. They wanted a God they could see, a God to lead them that wasn't a pillar of smoke. So they fashioned a golden calf, a familiar deity from their time in Egypt. They weren't necessarily rejecting God entirely in their minds. They were attempting to represent Him, to contain His power in a form they could understand and manage. But in doing so, they broke the foundational principle of their relationship with Him. They exchanged the glory of the immortal God for an image. They sought comfort in a creation rather than the Creator. This impulse is woven into the fabric of the human heart. We crave certainty. We long for a guarantee of blessing, a talisman against misfortune. And when our faith in the unseen God wavers, the temptation is always there to reach for something we can hold on to, something that feels more real in the moment, even if it is a complete illusion. This internal battle is the very stage upon which our story is set, in a tent pitched somewhere in the ancient Near East, with a family on the run. At the center of this drama are the teraphim. The word itself is shrouded in mystery, its exact origins lost to time. In the biblical text, these objects appear as a strange and troubling thread. They were household idols, often small, humanoid figures, passed down through generations. But they were more than just religious statues. Historical and archaeological evidence suggests the teraphim were deeply connected to matters of family inheritance and legal rights. To possess the family teraphim could, in some cultures of that era, be seen as holding the title deed to the father's estate. They were also used for divination, a way of seeking guidance or predicting the future, a practice explicitly forbidden by the God of Israel. So these were not simple decorations. They were a complex blend of pagan spirituality, legal authority, and superstitious security. They represented a worldview where divine favor could be secured and the future could be manipulated through physical objects. They were the ultimate safety net for those who found it difficult to trust in a God who promises to provide, but refuses to be controlled. And it is these very objects, these potent symbols of a divided heart, that a woman named Rachel, the beloved wife of the patriarch Jacob, will risk everything to possess. The question that hangs heavy in the air, a question that will drive the narrative forward, is why? Why would the wife of a man who wrestled with God and saw his face, a man chosen to be the father of a great nation, feel the need to cling to the powerless idols of her pagan father? The answer lies buried in 2 decades of family betrayal, simmering resentment, and a desperate search for significance. To understand Rachel's desperate act, we must first understand the world she was desperate to escape. Her father, Laban, was a master of manipulation. He was the brother of Rebekah, Jacob's mother, which made him Jacob's uncle. When Jacob fled his enraged brother Esau, he sought refuge in Laban's household in Haran. There, he fell deeply in love with Laban's younger daughter, the beautiful Rachel. He agreed to work for Laban for 7 years as a bride price for her hand in marriage. The scripture tells us that these 7 years seemed like only a few days to him because of his love for her. But on the wedding night, Laban, in an act of staggering deception, switched his daughters. He gave his older, less favored daughter, Leah, to Jacob under the cover of darkness. When Jacob awoke to discover the betrayal, Laban was unapologetic. He manipulated cultural norms to his advantage and then extracted another 7 years of labor from Jacob in exchange for Rachel. For 14 years, Jacob worked just for his wives. For another 6, he worked for his flocks, during which Laban changed his wages 10 times, constantly trying to cheat him. This was a household built on deceit, a family dynamic poisoned by favoritism and exploitation. Jacob, the deceiver who had once tricked his own father, was now living in the house of a man who was an even greater master of the craft. For 20 years, this pressure cooker of resentment and rivalry simmered, shaping the lives and hearts of everyone involved. It was a context where trust was a foreign currency and security had to be seized, not received. Within this toxic family system, the 2 sisters, Leah and Rachel, were locked in a silent, painful war. Leah, the unloved wife, was blessed with fertility. She bore son after son for Jacob, desperately hoping that each child would finally earn her husband's love. She named them Reuben, he has seen my misery. Simeon, he has heard that I am not loved. Levi, now at last my husband will become attached to me. Her sons were living monuments to her heartache. Rachel, on the other hand, had Jacob's love, but her womb was closed. In that culture, a woman's value was inextricably tied to her ability to produce heirs. Every son born to Leah was another reminder of Rachel's own perceived failure and shame. Her barrenness was a genuine, agonizing challenge, a constant source of grief and humiliation. This desperation drove her to bitter jealousy, lashing out at her husband, "Give me children or I'll die." It was a cry from the depths of a soul that felt worthless and forgotten. This rivalry wasn't just a petty squabble, it was an existential crisis for both women, playing out in the most intimate spaces of their lives. It's crucial to see this pain, this genuine human suffering, because it forms the emotional crucible in which Rachel's fateful decision is forged. Her theft of the teraphim was not the act of a hardened criminal, but the desperate grasp of a woman who had spent a lifetime feeling insecure, second best and barren. A woman looking for any source of power, any token of security, in a world that had consistently denied her the one thing she wanted most. But ice over part break. The breaking point finally came after 20 long years. God had blessed Jacob despite Laban's schemes, and Jacob's flocks had grown immense. Laban and his sons grew openly hostile, their jealousy poisoning the air. It was then that God spoke directly to Jacob, "Go back to the land of your fathers and to your relatives, and I will be with you." The command was clear: The time of exile was over. Jacob secretly conferred with Rachel and Leah, who readily agreed to flee. They too had been wronged by their father, who they said had sold them and used up their inheritance. The plan was set for a clandestine escape. While Laban was away shearing his sheep, a time of celebration that would distract him and his men, Jacob gathered his wives, his children, and all his possessions. He put his family on camels and drove his vast herds toward the Euphrates River, heading south to the land of Canaan. It was a massive, high-stakes undertaking, an entire patriarchal clan moving with stealth across the land, hoping to get a 3-day head start before their departure was discovered. Every detail was planned, every contingency considered. But as they packed their lives into bundles, carrying the future of the 12 tribes of Israel with them, Rachel packed a secret. A heavy, dangerous secret that went far beyond personal keepsakes. She stole her father's teraphim, the household gods, and hid them among her belongings, setting in motion a confrontation that would threaten to destroy them all. The act itself is stated with stark simplicity in Genesis 31, verse 19. When Laban had gone to shear his sheep, Rachel stole her father's household gods. There is no elaborate description, just a blunt statement of fact. But beneath this simple sentence lies a universe of complex motivations. Why did she do it? The text doesn't explicitly say, leaving us to piece together the clues from her character and her culture. Perhaps it was a final act of rebellion against the father who had used and betrayed her. Stealing his gods was a way of taking back a piece of the power and control he had wielded over her for so long. Or maybe, as some scholars suggest, it was a calculated move to secure her family's inheritance. By possessing the teraphim, she might have believed she was securing the legal claim to Laban's wealth for her husband and sons. But the most likely reason is also the most personal. For 2 decades, she had lived in a pagan household, surrounded by these symbols of divine protection and guidance. While her husband Jacob spoke of his invisible God, the teraphim were tangible. In a moment of fear, facing a perilous journey into an unknown future, she may have reverted to what was familiar. She may have hedged her bets, unable to fully trust Jacob's God to protect her, seeking a little extra insurance from the God she had always known. It was an act born of a divided heart, a faith that was real but incomplete, tainted by the lingering superstitions of her upbringing. She was trying to serve 2 masters, a choice that would soon bring her to the brink of disaster. 3 days. That was the head start they had. On the 3rd day, a messenger reached Laban with the news. Jacob had fled. The text says Laban's anger was kindled. He gathered his kinsmen, a formidable group of men, and set off in hot pursuit. For 7 days, they rode hard, closing the distance between them and the fugitives. Imagine the scene: Jacob's slow-moving caravan, burdened by children and livestock, a vulnerable target on the open plains. And behind them, the relentless, dust-clouded approach of Laban and his posse, driven by a fury born of betrayal and the theft of his property, most notably his gods. The chase culminated in the hill country of Gilead, a rugged, mountainous region. Laban finally overtook Jacob, trapping him against the terrain. The tension must have been unbearable. This was not a family reunion, it was a showdown. Laban, with his superior numbers and righteous anger, had every advantage. He could have fallen upon them, striking them down and taking back his daughters and his property by force. For Jacob's family, this was a moment of mortal peril. Their escape had failed. They were caught. Their fate now rested in the hands of the very man they had spent 20 years trying to get away from, a man known for his cunning and his ruthlessness. All of Rachel's fears, the very fears that likely drove her to steal the idols in the first place, were now being realized. The security she thought the idols could provide was proving to be utterly worthless against the tangible threat of her father's wrath. The confrontation begins with Laban's bitter accusation. "What have you done?" he demands of Jacob. "You've deceived me and carried off my daughters like captives in war. Why did you run off secretly and deceive me? And you have stolen my gods." Jacob, unaware of Rachel's crime, is indignant. He defends his secret departure, citing his fear that Laban would take his daughters from him by force. But on the matter of the stolen gods, he is boldly and dangerously confident. His own heart is clear, and he assumes the same of his entire household. He makes a rash and terrifying vow, speaking with the absolute certainty of an innocent man. "But if you find anyone who has your gods," he declares to Laban, "they shall not live. In the presence of our relatives, see for yourself whatever I have that is yours, and take it." In that moment, Jacob unknowingly pronounces a death sentence upon his beloved wife, Rachel. The stakes are now impossibly high. The search is no longer just about recovering stolen property. It is a life or death hunt for an idol and the thief who took it. The air crackles with tension as Laban, armed with Jacob's own words, begins his search. Moving from tent to tent, his eyes scanning every possession, confident that he will expose the thief and justify his rage before everyone. The fate of the entire family hangs on what he will or will not find. The search begins. Laban, fueled by righteous fury, enters Jacob's tent, then Leah's tent. He rummages through their belongings, his frustration mounting with every empty search. He moves on to the tents of the two maidservants, Bilhah and Zilpah, who were also Jacob's concubines. Nothing. The entire camp watches in silence as the patriarch is systematically searched and humiliated by his father-in-law. Finally, only one tent remains: Rachel's. As Laban's shadow falls across the entrance to her tent, we see a clash of two worlds: Laban's misplaced faith in his tangible, stealable gods, and Rachel's misplaced faith in her ability to control her own destiny through them. It's a moment pregnant with irony and danger. As this ancient drama unfolds, it forces us to ask what we might be hiding in our own tents, the secret securities we cling to that undermine our professed faith in God. If this story is beginning to speak to a modern truth you recognize, a struggle that feels familiar, consider sharing this video with someone who might also be wrestling with these questions. Sometimes, seeing our own struggles reflected in these ancient narratives is the first step toward finding freedom. Laban strides into Rachel's tent, certain his quarry is cornered, certain that the proof of Jacob's treachery is within his grasp. Inside the tent, Rachel has a plan. She has taken the teraphim and placed them inside her camel's saddle, and now she is sitting on it. When her father enters, she remains seated. With an air of perfect composure, she addresses him. "Don't be angry, my lord," she says, "that I cannot stand up in your presence. I'm having my period." In the culture of the time, this was a masterful stroke of deception. A woman during her menstrual cycle was considered ceremonially unclean, and anything she sat on was also considered unclean. Her excuse was not only plausible, but also created a powerful cultural and religious barrier. For Laban to insist she move, or to search the saddle she was sitting on, would have been a significant social and ritual taboo. He would have defiled himself. Frustrated and outmaneuvered by his own daughter's quick thinking and his culture's customs, Laban gives up. The search is over. He has found nothing. Rachel's lie has saved her. On the surface, it appears that human cleverness has won the day. It seems that a quick wit and a convenient lie were the saviors of the moment. But to stop there is to miss the entire point of the story, to mistake the shadow for the substance. For while Rachel was busy protecting her stolen idols with a lie, the real protection for Jacob's family had already been put in place, not by a human scheme, but by a divine intervention that no one but Laban knew had even occurred. To see the hand of God, we have to rewind the story slightly. The night before Laban caught up with Jacob's caravan, something extraordinary happened. Genesis 31 verse 24 gives us the true key to this entire encounter. But God came to Laban the Aramean in a dream at night and said to him, "Be careful not to say anything to Jacob, either good or bad." This is the divine manifestation. It is not a pillar of fire or a parted sea. It is a quiet, direct, and absolutely authoritative word spoken into the heart of an angry man while he slept. God did not strike Laban down. He did not send an army of angels. He simply set a boundary. He put a divine restraint on Laban's wrath. When Laban confronted Jacob, he even admitted it, saying, "I have the power to harm you. But last night the God of your father said to me, 'Be careful not to say anything to Jacob, either good or bad.'" So, the reason Jacob and his family were safe had nothing to do with Rachel's hidden idols or her clever lie. They were safe because the God who is unseen had already gone before them and disarmed their enemy. The teraphim, the very objects Rachel trusted for protection, were utterly powerless. They had to be stolen, hidden, and protected by a lie. In stark contrast, the God of Jacob needed no help. He acted sovereignly, powerfully, and invisibly to protect his chosen people, demonstrating that true security is found not in a physical object we can cling to, but in a relationship with the living God who holds all power in his hands. This ancient story, with its dusty tents and strange household gods, holds up a mirror to our own sophisticated modern lives. It forces us to ask a deeply uncomfortable question. What are the teraphim we are hiding in our own tents? They may not be small, carved figurines. They are far more subtle and far more integrated into our lives. For some, the teraphim is a bank account, a stock portfolio, a retirement plan. It's the tangible number on a screen that we trust for our future security more than we trust the God who owns the cattle on 1,000 hills. For others, it's a career, a title, a reputation. It's the source of our identity and self-worth, the thing we protect at all costs, the altar upon which we sacrifice our time, our families, and even our integrity. For many, the teraphim are relationships, a spouse, a child, a friendship that we elevate to the place of God, looking to another flawed human being to provide the ultimate meaning, acceptance, and happiness that only our Creator can give. These modern idols, just like Rachel's, promise security, identity, and control, and just like hers, they are utterly powerless. They cannot deliver on their promises. They are liabilities masquerading as assets, and they must be protected by our own frantic efforts, hidden away by our anxieties, because deep down, we know they are fragile and can be taken from us at any moment. The insidious nature of modern idolatry is that it rarely feels like a deliberate rejection of God. Like Rachel, we often try to hold on to God with one hand and our teraphim with the other. We go to church, we pray, we read the scriptures, but in the back of our tent, sitting on the camel's saddle of our heart, is the thing we really trust when the pressure is on. This divided allegiance has a devastating effect, not only on our own spiritual lives, but also on our ability to be a light to others. It directly impacts the work of evangelism. How can we authentically proclaim a message that says, Jesus is all you need, if our own lives are a frantic testimony to the fact that we believe we need Jesus plus financial security, Jesus plus a perfect family, Jesus plus public approval? The world is not blind. People can see the anxiety behind our carefully curated lives. They can sense the fear that drives our relentless pursuit of worldly security. A compromised witness is the inevitable result of a divided heart. The most powerful tool for evangelism is not a clever argument or a slick presentation. It is a life that has been radically set free from the tyranny of the world's idols. It is the quiet confidence of a person who has searched their own tent, found their hidden teraphim, and had the courage to bring them out into the open and lay them at the feet of the one true God. Clinging to our idols comes at a great cost. They promise peace, but produce anxiety because they are things that can be lost. They promise identity, but produce insecurity because our value becomes tied to our performance or possessions. They promise freedom, but produce bondage, making us slaves to the very things we think we own. Look at Rachel. Her trust in these objects put her and her entire family in mortal danger. It led her to lie and deceive, creating a crack in the foundation of her relationships. The irony is that the whole time she was desperately trying to secure her future by clinging to these idols, the God of her husband was actively securing her future through his sovereign power. The idols were a distraction. They were a dead weight. They added nothing but risk and fear to her journey. Our modern idols do the same. The time, energy, and emotional bandwidth we spend protecting our financial idols, our relational idols, or our reputational idols is energy that is diverted from worshipping and enjoying the one true God. They create a spiritual static that makes it difficult to hear his voice. They are a counterfeit comfort that prevents us from experiencing the true comfort of the Holy Spirit. God, in his protective jealousy, wants to free us from this. He sees the burden these false gods place upon us, and his call to have no other gods before me is not a call to deprivation, but an invitation to liberation. This brings us to the most beautiful part of the story, the final and most important point, the character of God that is revealed in this messy human drama. He is the God who is jealous for us. His desire for our exclusive worship is not for his benefit, but for ours. He knows that anything else we worship will ultimately harm and enslave us. He is the God who makes a promise and keeps it. He told Jacob, "I will be with you," and in the dream to Laban, he proved his faithfulness. He didn't wait for Jacob's family to be perfect. He protected them in the midst of their dysfunction, their fear, and even their sin. This is a staggering grace. While Rachel was clinging to a powerless idol, God was holding her and her entire family in his powerful hand. He is the God who speaks. He doesn't just act from a distance. He intervenes and communicates his will, bringing his restraining word to an enemy in a dream, guiding his people toward their destiny. This is the God we are invited to worship. Not a God who can be stolen and hidden in a camel's saddle, but the God who holds the universe in his hands. Not a God who is silent and must be interpreted through superstition, but the God who has spoken definitively through his Son, Jesus Christ. Our worship, then, is not a blind leap into the dark. It is a logical and joyous response to the character of who he has revealed himself to be. Let's contrast the two objects of faith in this story one last time. The teraphim were made of wood or stone. They were lifeless, silent, and powerless. They had to be carried, they had to be protected, they had to be hidden by a lie. They offered a false sense of security that was exposed as utterly fraudulent the moment a real threat appeared. They represented a faith based on human control and superstition. Now consider the God of Jacob. He is spirit, unseen, yet overwhelmingly present. He is the living God who speaks and acts in history. He is all-powerful, able to disarm a vengeful man with a single word in a dream. He is the one who carries his people, who protects them not because of their righteousness, but because of his promise. He offers true security, a security based not on our ability to hold on to him, but on his unbreakable promise to hold on to us. Adoration and worship flow naturally when we grasp this contrast. Why would we settle for a heavy, lifeless idol when we can have a relationship with the living God? Why would we trust in a fragile security that we have to protect when we can rest in a sovereign protector who never slumbers or sleeps? The story of Rachel's teraphim is an urgent call to examine the objects of our own trust and to joyfully exchange our worthless idols for the priceless gift of knowing and worshipping the one true God. So the invitation today is to conduct a search of our own tents, to have the courage to pull back the rug, to look inside the camel's saddle of our own hearts, and to be honest about what we find there. What are the secret things we are trusting in? What are the sources of security we turn to when our faith feels weak? What are the idols we are hiding, protecting with the flimsy lies of rationalization and self-justification? The good news of this story is that God's grace is bigger than our idolatry. He was faithful to Jacob and Rachel even in their flawed and fearful state, and He is faithful to us. He doesn't wait for us to be perfect to love and protect us. But He does invite us into something more. He invites us into the freedom and joy of wholehearted devotion. He invites us to cast aside the heavy weight of our false gods and to rest in His strength alone. True worship isn't about singing songs on a Sunday. It's about the daily, conscious decision to enthrone God as the one and only Lord of our lives. It is to find our security, our identity, and our hope not in a thing that can be stolen, but in the King who can never be shaken. May we have the courage to leave our teraphim in the dust and worship Him alone, in spirit and in truth. And so we arrive at the final quiet moment of this ancient drama. The tents have been searched, the accusations have been made, and the journey continues. But the teraphim, the silent gods, remain hidden beneath Rachel, a dark secret carried into the heart of God's chosen family. This isn't just a historical account. It is a mirror held up to our own souls. It reveals a profound and unsettling truth. Our greatest treasures are often our heaviest burdens. The story leaves us face to face with the God who sees all, the God who is not frantic like Laban, because He is never missing anything. He is the God who watches His beloved children cling to worthless trinkets, even as He offers them an eternal inheritance. He is the God whose defining attribute, in this context, is a holy and jealous love. Scripture declares in Exodus 34:14, "Do not worship any other God, for the Lord, whose name is jealous, is a jealous God." This is not the petty, insecure jealousy of a human lover. It is the fierce, protective, all-consuming passion of a creator for his creation. He is jealous for our worship, for our affection, for our trust, not because he is lacking, but because he knows that anything less than him is a cheap substitute that will ultimately fail us, enslave us, and destroy us. He watched Rachel choose a tangible idol over the intangible promise, and his heart breaks for us when we do the same. This is the moment for reflection. What are the teraphim you have hidden in the saddle of your own life? What secret securities, hidden dependencies, or private idols do you refuse to let go of? Perhaps it's the idol of financial security, the approval of others, control over your family, or a secret habit that offers fleeting comfort. Like Rachel, you might be sitting on it, defending it, pretending it isn't there, even as the God of the universe gently calls you to stand up and walk away from it. This is our invitation to worship. Worship is not merely singing songs on a Sunday morning. True, authentic worship is the act of dethroning our idols and enthroning the one true God. It is the soul's confession that He alone is worthy of our trust, our love, and our complete allegiance. It is standing up from the camel's saddle, revealing the hidden things to His loving gaze, and declaring, "You are enough." Let us, therefore, approach Him not with the frantic energy of Laban searching for what was lost, but with the humble heart of a child who has finally realized the toy they were clinging to is just a shadow. Let us praise the God who sees, the God who knows, and the God who in His infinite mercy waits patiently for us to trade our worthless teraphim for the priceless treasure of His presence. This is the ultimate goal of evangelism. Not to condemn the idolater, but to introduce them to the one true God who sets the captive free. Worship Him now in the quiet of your own heart by surrendering the things you hide. For he is the only treasure that will never be stolen, never decay, and will satisfy your soul for all eternity.